My number 90. 9036.
Now call the June. I now call the June 7th. No. Was this is the June 14th, 2023 special call meeting to order. Before the board today, we will be discussing adoption of the budget ordinance. However, before we get to that point, we're going to look at recommendations that have been made from the Public Safety Committee. Mr. Chris Dillon, our Assistant County Manager, will read the recommendations as stated at our last Public Safety Committee meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Public Safety Committee, that's Austin, Brummett, and Faines, Feemster, and Taylor attending, met on Wednesday, June the 7th of this month. Also in discussions were represented from Bear Pond, Cokesbury, Drury, Epsom, Hicksboro, Kittrell, Townsville, Watkins, and the Vance County Fire Department. There were a number of issues that the committee discussed. One was the fire restructuring and budget proposal. The committee recapped previous discussions and on redistricting and increased department turnouts to structure fires. They also discussed a fire restructuring and budget proposal. The proposal included for a July 1st, 2023 implementation date, that would be this upcoming fiscal year, hiring freeze on Vance County Fire Department positions. There's currently 4 vacant positions within the fire department. Increase of part-time pay to $16 an hour. That's an increase of roughly $387,000 over the manager's recommended budget from the fire tax, and $25,000 for an outside consultant for an implementation recommendation. That consultant would assist staff with navigating legal and administrative implementation. For an October 1, 2023 implementation, that would reorganize the Vance County Fire Department, reclassify the Vance County Fire Chief to Fire Marshal. That position, the Fire Marshal new position, would be responsible for training and support for all nonprofit departments and serve as a liaison to the nonprofit and county departments. Reclassify Battalion Chief as a Battalion Chief / Fire Chief. It would eliminate all part-time Vance County Fire Department positions except one that's a legacy employee. And through the attrition of the full-time employees, the savings would then be used to pay back or to fund part-time employees in the future. It would reduce the Golden Belt Fire Department to $110,000 annually. That excludes salaries and portions of county-owned debt. And it would increase all nonprofit fire departments by $10,000 annually from the manager's recommended budget. That's an additional increase of $90,000 over the manager's recommended budget. It would increase Drury, Hicksboro, and a new Golden Belt department by an additional $10,000 for operations of substations, and that's an additional $30,000 over. Use the fire tax fund balance to pay debt on Car Lake Fire Substation. The current debt service payment annually is $21,000 with a total debt of $94,000. There were some questions about how commissioners expect the county department to attract volunteers when there's been a 25% decrease in volunteer firefighters since '85. Also, there's an assumption in the model that Golden Belt employees and volunteers are expected to fundraise an estimated $111,000 to $165,000 annually to supplement county funding to a county department. Without funding and staffing, residents and businesses within the entire county could see an increase in their insurance services office ISO ratings, causing increases in insurance premiums. Commissioners explained that this is a multi-year phase-in and the implementation study could address some of these issues. The recommendation from the committee was unanimously approved at the fire safety restructuring and budget proposal. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could I ask you
No.
a couple questions? Is that
No.
possible? I just want to ask him a couple questions,
You can't, can I say something to you for a minute?
ma'am.
Before you ask the question, can I say something to you? for a minute?
In public, yes, ma'am. Go ahead. Ma'am. One question I had, just general, and I get confused about all the numbers and this and that and everything, but there's one small question that I was looking at in your whole catalog of things. And that is, are we looking, in short term, are we looking at taking a full-time fire department and making it into a volunteer fire department?
I think you would have to talk to the committee members that wouldn't be a short term. I think that's through the implementation. That would be a longer term goal, but I can't speak to that directly.
Do you think the goal is to take a full-time fire department and make it a volunteer fire?
There's no intention of making it a volunteer fire department.
Sir?
There's no intention of making a volunteer fire department.
Well, then why don't we keep it as it is?
'Cause we
That
have
you
opportunities.
you're entitled
But
to,
I don't understand. I don't, go ahead. Yes. I'm sorry. Let me ask you this. Scott, since you're sitting there, tell me you're down the county manager.
at this point in time, you're out of order, Mr. Brummett. We have an order that we're going to go to and we follow.
Mr. Brummett is
excuse me,
not me.
Mr. Hester, we follow that process. We'll get to the point where you're trying to get to.
Oh, thank you, ma'am.
And first of all, what I want to say is this. This board has done its best to fill the gap that was formed when our county manager left. We had to hire a interim director. We had to try to make arrangements to hire a permanent director. We had to try to decide what was going to go along, and we tried to, as we progressed with this board, and we had to decide what we were going to do as it related to the budget. Different people on this board have different opinions. When we were elected, we were required by law to go to county commissioner schools. And one of the things they told us was if everybody agreed, then something wrong with your board. We have a board now where different people come from different backgrounds, they have different educational levels, and they have different experiences. So no one is going to always agree, just like everyone is not going to always agree with what the public has to say. This board has been bombarded with emails. We've been getting texts. We've been getting phone calls. We've been on the television, WRAL. There's been newspaper articles, and there also has been radio station reports. A lot of information that was given was not correct. We did not misunderstand in a lot of instances. A lot of stuff was intentionally misrepresented. At no time did anyone on this board ever say that we wanted to close the Golden Belt. What we said, and me specifically, was that I wanted to make sure that the citizens of Vance County were all protected. Not that we had one county fire department that's 24/7 that gives services after 7 to one group of people. But we wanted to work together as a group to make sure that all citizens in Vance County would receive the same protection. That at 3 o'clock in the morning when the call came in, that call would be answered by the appropriate departments. That's what we have been trying to achieve. But we have been accused of many different things that were not true. But if you look at it, when I said that we were going to go on an investigation, I meant exactly what we said. We were going to investigate. We have not been given time to investigate because different assumptions were made. Different statements were made to the television station. Different statements were made to the radio. That simply was not true. But nobody, I'm not going to say nobody, but some people did not take the initiative to ask individual commissioners person to person whether these statements were true. As for me and my vote, I have still been investigating. I believe in investigation, that you should look into a situation before you make a decision. The public safety is a committee. It's made up of 3 commissioners, Commissioner Alston, Commissioner Brummett, and Commissioner Faines. They do not represent the voice of the Board of Commissioners. We will take a vote and the vote will count. And the vote will be the majority will rule in this situation. So going about saying we had the plan to do this and plan to do that was not true. This board had not decided. We were still under investigation. So at this point and this time, yes, the committee has made a recommendation. This board has a chance to hear what those recommendations are. This board has a chance to disagree. Mr. Hester is entitled to his opinion. Ms. Faines is entitled to her opinion. Mr. Austin is entitled to his, and every other commissioner is entitled to their opinion. But we do have a county manager. We went through special effort to make sure that we got someone with experience. This county manager was somebody who has served over 20 years as the county manager for Pitt County. We looked at his credentials. We interviewed him and we thought he was capable. And at no time were we going to rely on public and not listen to our county manager. So we did listen when they spoke. We did listen to the financial director when she spoke. We did listen to you all when you spoke. I asked each of the volunteer chiefs to submit a recommendation to the committee to state how they felt and what would make their committees a better place so that they can better serve Vance County. I asked them to do that, but yet my statement was taken out of context. I don't care. If I didn't care, I wouldn't have asked. If I didn't care, I wouldn't have stated I wanted to hear from the committee, from the community, because I do care. And I want everybody to feel like they can go to sleep at night and feel safe, and that they have a catastrophe, that there's somebody that's going to come for them, just like somebody will come for me. That was the context of my statement. And so I say today, if somebody on this board wishes to make a comment, they're free to make any comments that they want to make. But I want to say this, I sat down, I personally spoke with our county manager. I respect his experience. I respect his background. I respect his integrity. And I listened to what he had to say. So right now, I want to yield the floor over to the county manager so he can relay to you what was relayed to us. And at that point, any commissioner that wishes to express their opinion, they're free to do so, because everybody on this board has a voice and everybody deserves to be heard, including Mr. Hester, Ms. Faines, Leo Kelly, myself, Mr. Brummett, Mr. Austin, and Archie Taylor. And so I've said my piece, so we're going to go ahead. I'm going to yield the floor to our county manager at this time.
Okay, start again. So again, a brief PowerPoint just to kind of recapture this discussion on fire services restructuring. This slide here obviously shows the 8 nonprofit fire departments, then including the county fire department, and then the Vance County Rescue Squad. The Public Safety Committee report, you heard from the Chris Dillon regarding their meeting of June the 7th. They reviewed the proposal restructure of fire services. And then by consensus, there was a recommendation to forward that to the full board, and that is why you're here today as part of this element of the overall context of the fiscal year 23-24 overall operating budget for the county. As part of that discussion, they did recommend what was termed as an implementation study rather than I guess a full scope study of looking at the pros and cons, but implementation study was included as part of their recommendation. So coming out of that, on the next slide, before the commissioners, you've got a copy of this PowerPoint, as well as you've got this layout of the budget recommendation for fire in front of you in a large sheet that looks like this, easier to read. And this basically shows on the left-hand column in green is the original county manager recommendations, both on the general fund and the fire service tax fund. In yellow on the right-hand side is the changes that are being put forward from that June 7th Public Safety Committee. I've asked Catherine Bigelow if she would just quickly review this, not in detail, but in the big picture.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott. If you want to look at the general fund at the top, the proposed budget for the Vance County Fire Department is 1.6 million. The proposed from the Public Safety Committee would bring that down to 1.1 million, which is the savings to the general fund of 496,000. In the fire tax, the original recommended was 2,054,000. The proposed changes from the public safety would be 2,490,000, which is a deficit of 436,000.
So moving on in terms of the next slide, the overall staff concerns. One of those is that basically at this point, we're dealing with more of a concept of restructuring versus a written implementation plan. There's the potential disruption of fire service for county residents and businesses if we just go forward with what has been put on the table so far. Other concern, future elimination of full-time county fire staff through attrition, meaning basically that as the full-time staff left, they would not be replaced, they'd be replaced with paid part-times, or if there were volunteers otherwise as well. Next bullet is concern of being the ability to recruit volunteers to the county's fire operations, as I'm sure all the other squads are dealing with having to recruit and retain volunteers themselves. Next bullet is the expectation and the legal ability to fundraise as a county department. This potentially could be up to a maximum of 165,000, even though there was some discussion at the end of the Public Safety Committee that the county in the general fund might make up that difference if the county fire department could not raise that amount of money. Another concern is the additional cost to cover volunteers. Right now in the Vance County Fire Department, we do have insurance coverage for workers' comp and liability, but if we had volunteers in there, that coverage would not cover those type of volunteers. We'd have to have a separate policy that would duplicate costs in terms of insurance coverage. I think that was about 23,000 on one of those coverages. One coverage. The next bullet is insurance coverage disputes between multiple policies. If you have a volunteer potentially driving a county truck and an incident happens versus the vice versa coverage, you'd have two different policies that could possibly cover instances. And the last bullet, uncertainty of fire service delivery without a specific defined plan. On the next slide, in terms of financial concerns, we have a concern about making transfers from the general fund to the fire service district fund. It's not a best practice to cover this type of recurring expense on a year-to-year basis. You could much make a comparison to the county's water district fund, which does operate as an enterprise fund, which the fire service is not, but it is a close cousin to it. We've been advised that it would not be a good practice. It could cause what is called an LGC, and the LGC is the Local Government Commission, which is out of Raleigh, a violation or trigger or risk factor, and they are recommending not to do that. This type of fund could potentially negatively impact the county's ability to borrow for future borrowings for capital needs, such as either jail expansion, jail renovation, or a new jail, or an EMS facility as you go out to the market to borrow money. And keep in mind, the LGC will have to approve those borrowings. The county will go before the LGC for approval, as they do for all cities and counties throughout the state. So if there's a delay of implementing the budget past June 30th, that would not be good for the county and probably would not bode well in that same line of thought with the LGC. Looking at an equivalent tax increase to the fire tax fund, it would be 2.5 cents to cover the $436,000 that's being put on it from the general fund, as you are moving these monies from the general fund of county government, which is the large operating fund, to the fire service district fund. And just wanted to point out that what is being proposed at this point in time is not, there are no cost savings. There never were any cost savings that were being proposed. It's just a transfer of monies from one accounting ledger to the other. So again, the rural fire service district, we have a negative $436 and $77. So the manager's recommendation on this is to go back to the original fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented by the former manager to basically adopt it. And then you are free and able to make any amendments to that budget that you as a board feel you need to make after July 1. Then go into the second budget, I'll back into this. We recommend hiring an outside consultant before any restructuring of the current fire service is performed. An outside agency should be hired to develop the best model to protect lives and property in Vance County. So if you do that, we've got 3 different consultants listed on here. There could be others as well. These are just 3 that we were able to quickly identify. If they were to come back and say that restructuring is a great idea, you could come back and amend the budget and move monies around appropriately per se, whether you couldn't reset the tax rate after July 1 within the fire fund or the general fund, but you could move monies around and begin to implement any recommendations. But bottom line, again, I really feel like what has been presented is more of a concept versus a formal written plan of how you would roll this out. And we just want to make sure that the best decision is made that the board can make.
Madam Chair, can I say something now? Please, ma'am.
After I do.
I am so happy that we got the county manager to speak. It's explained to me a lot better than it has been, and thank you for recognizing him and moving forward with this, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Basically, we as a board, as I stated, each person has their own opinions, their own backgrounds, their own experiences, and their own education. And what we took an oath to do is try to do what's best for the county. Everybody's not going to be satisfied with what decisions we make. We don't expect everyone to be satisfied, but we want to do what is best as we see it to the best of our own individual abilities. And then we want to do it to the best of our own collective abilities. At this time, I'm pretty sure there's many commissioners that's going to have their own personal views. I do agree with Mr. Elliott. I sat down with him personally. I had an in-depth discussion with him after the Public Safety Committee, and I listened to his recommendations. As part of that meeting, Ms. Bigelow was present. I listened to the things she had to say. I listened to the concerns that she had as well. I went back to the Public Safety Committee and expressed some of those concerns so that they could contact one another and make discussions. Because this is about discussions so that everybody can come to a conclusion that's going to be good for everyone. Mr. Elliott has made many recommendations today as to this proposed budget. This is the first time I'm seeing it. I'm pretty sure it's the first time some of the other commissioners may be seeing this particular document and the first time we're seeing this particular PowerPoint. We're going to ask you as a board, please bear with us as we continue our investigation. If we decide we want to hire a consulting firm as recommended by Mr. Elliott, please allow us to do so without running to the radio, running to the papers, running to the television stations with making statements that simply is not true. If you want to speak to us individually, our emails are on the public website along with our telephone numbers. If you have legitimate concerns and you're going to come to us decent and in order, then I have no problem with that. If you want to quote Bible scriptures with me, I'm a minister at St. James Missionary Baptist Church. Ms. Faines is an apostle at I Believe God Outreach Ministry. We're not going to come incorrect towards you because I value my salvation more than I do a fire department and what's here on this earth. But I value God. I may be out of order with separation in state, but I believe God and I believe in him leading me. That's why we have a prayer beforehand. We did not start off with prayer, but I think we reached the point that I'm going to ask Ms. Faines at this time to do an invocation for us.
Most gracious Father, we come today to give you glory, honor, and praise. You said in all things give thanks, and we thank you for who you are in our life, individual life. We ask that you just be in the midst of us, that you will continue to give us the wisdom and knowledge to guide us and lead us into all truth. And God, we thank you that you would just show yourself mighty in the midst of this meeting, that we do things that are in decency and in order, that all we say and that we do, that you are pleased and that glorified in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. At this time, I'm going to open it for discussion. Mr. Hester, I believe you were the first one to state that you wish to be addressed. I'm opening the floor up to you at this time.
Everybody looking at me.
She said she giving you, if you want to sit.
I'm right now from hearing what you got the county manager talked about, and you're looking at keeping the budget as it is, so, and then looking forward, I like his recommendation. Second,
We're not on the budget item right now, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
That's later in the session.
That is correct, Mr. Brumman. At this time, you look at your notice, a special meeting, there is an order. First, we were to discuss the Public Safety Committee report. So if anyone, I'm gonna table your motion. I'm not saying withdraw it at this time. I'm just gonna table it to the appropriate time. Mr. Taylor. So if anyone wishes to address the Public Safety Committee report and recommendations, they can do so at this time.
Have they put a report up? You said.
It was read by Mr. Dillon.
Okay, so you just want us to have our opinion? What we gotta say?
Is the committee still, is the Public Safety Committee still going through with that particular recommendation as stated by Mr. Dillon?
No, ma'am.
Okay, now, moving on, so it's clear. The statement, so everyone be on the same page, the statements that were made at the Public Safety Committee as it related to that proposed budget, as stated, that is not the current recommendation of the Public Safety Committee. I just wanted to make that clear so everyone will have an understanding. Now, at this particular point in time, Mr. Taylor has made,
Motion. Managers recommended fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented.
second,
all those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, say nay.
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 I'm not ready to take action on that. We haven't finished our conversation
Yeah, that's,
on the Public Safety Committee.
If it's once we take a vote, then we'll go back to that situation.
So I want to hear the conversation in the Public Safety Committee before.
we're in the process of voting.
Well, there was never a call for discussion.
Yes,
So-
it was. And we're in the process of voting right now. You've already had a nay, yay, and nay. What's the outcome?
I mean, right now, I'd have to say nay because we haven't finished. the
Well, I don't want that. I want a roll call vote.
No.
That's fine, but that the chairman has to do that.
Mr.
The motion
Taylor.
is to adopt the manager's recommended fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented. And I said yes.
Ms. Grissom, was you tally as the clerk? Mr. Austin, what is your vote?
No.
No,
no.
Yes.
Yes,
My vote would be no. So at this time, we are voting no as to accept it as it is. Now, if there's any, one wants to make any discussions or make any additional motions at this time,
I do. On the public safety, we came up with a budget, a plan, a theory. But the theory was, I'm not gonna say unjust, but uncertain. Certain things was cloudy, certain things was misunderstood, and a lot of people took certain things the wrong way. So we came up with a proposal for the fire department based off of everybody's issues and everybody's complaints, what we studied, what we didn't study, and what we came up with, all in one. It's kind of confusing, but trying to get through it. We did want a motion to be accepted, like the form, like Jordan had put out. We want to accept that budget, but we wanted to put a freeze on all additional funding. We want a recommendation for a study and implementation for approval of the budget for the fire department. We wanted to freeze their budget for the county fire department except for the salaries and operating expenses. Any equipment or other spendings will come before the board for approval until the study is completed as it relates to the county fire department. We want to put a hiring freeze on the Vance County Fire Department for all unfilled positions. Proceed with separating the chief and the fire marshal. No part-time salary increase until the study has been completed for the county and the volunteers. If a full-time employee is relieved of any reason, it can only be refilled by a part-time employee. The volunteer fire department only gets the $100,000 as usual until the study is complete. Basically, we voted for a study to get clarity, to get a true understanding on if we are making the right decision or if we're not making the right decision. So we're gonna use one of them available consultants to help us come up with the right plan, whether we right or whether we wrong, or whether we halfway right or whether we halfway wrong. That's our proposal.
Second. There was a motion.
I would ask that we, prior to taking the vote, that we have a discussion, because I think several members of the board is gonna want to have a discussion. I want to give everybody that same opportunity to, say what they feel. You're entitled to your opinion, you're entitled to your vote. One of the things I did discuss with the county manager was potential freezing of certain positions until such time that the study could be completed. I think in their efforts, the public safety, in their efforts to do that, they are making certain recommendations, but if everybody's not on that committee. So if there's other board members who have their own personal opinions, I think they should be heard. So, Mr. Hester, if you have the public safety.
A couple of things I'd like to bring out. First of all, the Public Safety Committee met. They came up with a program of what they wanted to do. Well, from hearing what I'm hearing today, then the Public Safety Committee has met again without public notice. And that cannot happen. I'm not sitting here saying that maybe what the recommendation is good or bad, but what I am saying is you're doing this and you haven't opened it to the public first.
Can I say one thing?
Let me correct him on that, if I may.
Go ahead.
Where did y'all meet again?
Let me explain this to you. We did not meet. I gave my concerns. I gave my ideas. I gave what I was clear on and what I won't clear on. Ms. Faines gave me hers. I talked to Brummett. Hold on.
But you didn't meet as a public
We don't-
meeting. You
For me to have a conversation with Mr. Brummett.
gotta
it's not a-
notify these people out there.
No, we have to notify them when we have a
Yes, you
collective
do.
meeting.
You can't have a committee meeting and not notifying the public.
How is that a committee?
First of all, I think we need clarity. I don't believe that they, from my understanding, I don't think they had a meeting one with one another. I don't think they personally even seen each other.
Well, whether you
Since this
meet
public safety
whether you
meeting.
meet hit face to face or whether you meet over the phone is immaterial. But what you did have, you had a committee meeting and didn't notify the public.
But did they have a committee meeting? You weren't present, Mr. Hester, so you
How did
didn't
they
have
change
let
it?
him
How did they
finish.
change anything if they didn't have a
If he
meeting?
had a conversation.
Why
with
don't you
her,
have it?
I could have a conversation
don't
with
you have
you.
a-
I could have a
don't you
conversation with
let
Leo,
these
but that
people-
don't mean we having a public
Why
meeting.
don't you let these people out here, right here, tell them now you're gonna have a committee meeting and make your recommendation, and come back to the board. What's wrong with that?
Mr. County Attorney.
I believe it would be inaccurate to relate or to say that the committee has made any decisions. I believe that a commissioner can say that after consultation with certain commissioners, so long as that consultation did not violate any of the public meeting rules, that would be a more accurate statement to make.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something here.
Go ahead.
The decision that I just heard from Commissioner.
Yeah.
Is the mic on? Oh, going now. I'm sorry. The decision that I just heard put forth by Commissioner Alston reflects the fact that a decision has already been made without a consultant. You're saying you're going to get a consultant to study this, but you say you've made a decision. You made a decision not to fund the Vance County Fire Department. You've made a decision to freeze positions. You've made a decision to essentially keep the Vance County Fire Department from being able to function as it has always functioned because you're taking money from them to do their job. That's the decision made. Before a consultant is even brought into the picture, you've made a decision. And I'm opposed to that. If you're going to do an investigation, as you say, and if you're going to bring in a consultant, as you say, then things must remain the same until we have the results from those consultants and investigation.
Would you clarify the discussion that we had, Mr. Elliott, in terms so that everyone would be on the same accord?
Well, I think one of the things we talked about was the freezing the 4 vacant full-time fire positions until a study is completed. I believe we also discussed freezing the new funding that's identified in the fire budget for the squad north and south.
Do the extra and five. The extra.
You can't.
The additional hours in the fire tax for Bear Pond and Hicksboro, freezing that as well from the general fund, the 4 vacant positions in the Vance County Fire Department
Correct.
is what was.
The point being, you can't make any decisions about changing anything. If you do, you made a decision before you've gotten a consultant in to advise you, and you've made a decision before there's any investigation. You've come forward, this motion that was presented here, given to me before this meeting started, with all these proposals about freezing positions in the Vance County Fire Department. All of those presentations essentially neuter and keep the Vance County Fire Department from doing the job it's been doing all along. It can't do that because you've come up with all these proposals to stymie them before you've done any investigation and before you've gotten a consultant. I don't know how you can do that. If you're honest when you say you want to do an investigation, if you're honest when you say you want a consultant, if you're honest when you say you don't want to take any action until you hear from them. That's
I don't think
that-
we want to get into any kind of question of anybody's integrity today, because that can go a long way and we don't need to go there. The manager spoke about potentially freezing certain situations. That's contrary to what you just said, Mr. Taylor, that we couldn't do it at all. So you're contradicting what the manager is saying about freezing anything. So now at this point in
Manager
time,
didn't
I
say-
just want, if
the manager,
we
Madam
got an
Chairman,
attorney, if you want to
recommendation.
clarify what's the difference, so everybody understand what the difference is.
Can I just ask one thing? Based on what the county manager recommended in terms of what Mr. Halsey perceived, I think that kind of information can come from a consultant, right? Once you can arrive at the same decisions that what's stated here, once you have a consultant. That's like, this is sort of like me putting the horse in front of the cart. Our interim county manager has made a recommendation, which is the driving force to drive this budget. And I think once a consultant, the other things that we'd like to see and take place will come out as a result of a consultant. I'd like the county managers, I like what you said. I think it gets after what the safety committee has put here.
And the main thing, Commissioner Kelly, is the county manager said, let's adopt the fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented.
And as our
Now all
chairman,
of these
and as our chairman so
freezing,
eloquent,
freezing that is not in that budget.
as our chairman stated, that Mr. Elliott comes with experience and years of experience, and I appreciate your recommendation, sir.
Madam Chair, if I can speak. So you could adopt the fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented with the caveat or with the stipulation that those positions, the 4 full-time vacant positions in the funding that the finance officer just mentioned, that be froze in place. It's still in the budget. It's still a part of the appropriations in that budget. So you could make a motion and it really would not affect the budget ordinance at all. You would still, those dollars are still appropriated in the new July 1 budget. It's just when the study comes back as to whether you unfreeze those or you restructure. So those two things would not be in conflict with adopting the budget as presented.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make that proposal.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I'm making it as a motion.
Can they complete?
As
you
per what,
spoke,
as
yeah.
per what the county manager said, I don't have a problem with that at all. I'd like to make that motion to go along with what he said as the budget is set and freeze the 4 positions. But you keep Vance County Fire Department as is until you have to study it. Is that what you were saying?
Yes, yes, sir. I would, the attorney can rule on this, but you have a motion second on the floor. You'd either have that removed or have a substitute motion offered.
That is correct. So that can either be treated as a friendly amendment. It's up to the prerogative of the board, the chair.
Well, I think at this time, when Mr. Taylor made his motion, it wasn't so much that everybody was against the motion. I think it was an issue of we did not talk about that freezing aspect of it. So it had we accepted as is, we would not have had that aspect. And I think that's why certain commissioners voted for nay, so that we can get to that point. And so that was one of the issues, to try to get to that point where we can have the input from our county manager when he speaks about the freezing issue. And so that everybody would be on the same accord as to how that would be implemented and how that could take place. And also be able to have our county attorney hear that, to make sure that we were moving in a direction that we were authorized by law to go into. And whether, it could be done or it couldn't be done. If it couldn't be done, we can't do it, and that's that. But if it could be, to clarify to the entire board if we're going in the right direction and how to get to that friendly amendment and such.
That's right,
So-
Madam Chair. And so then I believe Commissioner Austin made a secondary motion that was seconded by Commissioner Faines. And that is the friendly amendment that I was referring to with Mr. Hester's motion, that we either vote up or down or deal with Mr. Austin's or deal with Commissioner Hester's friendly amendment to Commissioner Austin's motion.
Okay,
Madam Chair, can I ask a question? What is the difference when we had the public safety meeting with the committee here and we had that proposal to go before the people? So we listened to each and every one. So we came back and put this part in place instead of what we have. So what is the difference of them being here that day? Listen to what we had already put on the floor versus taking this and changing it from what we said and putting this proposal into place. So what's the difference? You see what I'm saying? We want to add this. We already had a proposal what we was going to bring back to the committee, right?
So the committee,
From that last week.
the
meeting.
committee brought forward much more specific budgetary changes with some additional, I believe, recommendations on some restructuring. This is strictly addressing budgetary numbers. Commissioner Austin's motion encompasses more than what Commissioner Hester has said that he would support and is offering as a friendly amendment to Commissioner Austin's motion.
Madam Chair,
yes.
I would tend to support.
Go ahead. You go ahead and take over.
Somebody turned all these microphones off. That's been the problem today. Okay, I would tend to support what Mr. Austin was saying in the item where we want to maintain the operational spending for the department. I have some concerns with some of the proposed capital expenditures, which I believe need more investigation prior to releasing those funds. And so my thoughts would be that we maintain the operational budget, but we do not allow the spending of the capital type funds on that department until we get through the study. It was my understanding, I believe, from conversation with our county manager, that the study should take from 60 to 90 days. So it should not be a long drawn out process. We ought to be able to accomplish this fairly quickly. And so that would be, to me, the intent of holding off on everything except operational expenses. We would continue to maintain the full-time and part-time individuals would still work just as they normally would. And so the operation of the fire department would not change. And so whatever we need to do to accomplish that, that's what I would support.
Could I ask you? Okay. I think what is happening is we are on the same accord on one of the main issues, but I think there's some, because I see 9 things on the page, there are some things that may not pertain to the budget. It would go more towards the restructuring issue, and I don't think that we need to put them all together. I think it may be more economical if we separated them and then maybe looked at each in their own, as each individual motion that Mr. Austin has put together, and then vote on them separately, and what we approve, we approve, and what we don't. I think that would be easy for everyone. I think one of the main things in speaking with Mr. Elliott was that we go ahead, because we have until June the 30th to adopt the budget. We need to go ahead and move forward with this. We've been on it a long period of time. So we need to get this in place so it can be produced at the next meeting. We've had public hearings. People could have made comments last time. No one chose to on the budget issue. I think there was one gentleman that did not get to speak and in the public comment section, and I do apologize. It was not intentional. And so again, I apologize if you didn't get to speak, and I do, want to get, if that individual is present, I will acknowledge that they want to say anything, because like I said, it was not an intentional oversight or anything. It was just trying to get through that evening to get the comments in place so we can go ahead and look at our agenda and get that underway so we can examine the different aspects of the budget and the meeting in which we had to deal with on that evening. But like I said, at this time,
Madam Chair.
Mhm.
Would it be appropriate to approve the budget individually with the budget and then approve the whatever freezing we want to do by separate motions? Would that be more appropriate?
Yes,
I've,
Madam Chair, yes, you could do that.
okay.
That would, I thought,
I still have a problem. I still have a problem with Mr. Elliott in terms of what you recommend. And you say a study would take 30 to 90 days. You're looking at 3 months.
I'd say 60 to 90, and that's
60 to
once we
90
sign the
days.
contract.
All of these issues can be addressed through the study. It's not like it's going to be next year. We have, time is of the essence. And I think that I still think that what you have recommended gets us to the study, and then all of these other intricate parts will come out as a result of the study.
In terms of the 4 vacant positions, I think last year on July 1, when the current year we're sitting in through June 30th, you approved an additional 3 full-time firefighters for the department. We've had difficulty even trying to get those 3 positions filled. On average, we've had 3 to 4 vacant. We've had to rely upon the full-time personnel plus our paid part-time. So freezing those 4 is really not going to be operationally that much different than how we've operated.
And when you say there are capital things that need to be addressed, then we can address that through the study too. As a commissioner, once we get the report back, because there may need to be other capital things or financial things that'll need to take place as a result of the study, right?
Correct. And Madam Chair, if I misspoke on that, Chris, have you had those vacancies? Can you just say yes or no, or am I misspoken on that? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, one question that just popped in my mind. What is the hurry? And this thing has been going on 40 years. We've had the Golden Belt Fire Department, and all of a sudden we want to make, what is another 30 to 60 to 90 days?
that's what we're doing to start.
that's what we're talking about.
But then don't do anything and pass the budget as it is and come back in the 30 to 90, 60 days after you got a recommendation.
And I think that's where everybody was, I
Yeah.
just said, that's
That
what I
what you're
just
gonna
said.
do?
that if
And
we
leave, and leave everything as it is.
What,
There was confusion.
that's not, again, that's not what I said. What I said was in addressing the budget issue, I think everybody was on the same accord that we go ahead and address it. And that's the issue that our county manager stated that a possibility of things could be done. I think some of the other commissioners want to look at those issues as to whether or not they want to do any freezing of positions or whatever, because it will affect, the impact will have ramifications, because if, say for instance, I'm not saying he's going to do it, but Chris could go right now and hire, if we do not freeze the budget, he can go out and hire 9 part-timers and 4 full-timers in addition to what he got. That's going to affect whatever study is in place. I think what people are trying to do is just maintain the status quo. And so that nobody will go out and start adding additional positions, and then it affects what the study is trying to accomplish. I think that's the end result, I think, where everybody's trying to get, but we just having a problem getting there, you know? And so, you know, that's my opinion.
Mine too.
And so what we need to do is just find the method to get to the conclusion of, so the status quo can be maintained.
Trying to get us there.
Yeah, help us, Ken.
So Madam Chair, I think it would be appropriate for Commissioner Austin to remove his motion and then another motion be stated, because at this point, I'm not sure we're all clear what we're voting on.
Mhm.
Amen.
And that's,
I'll remove it.
do you remove yours?
I would like to, can I do this as far as that's concerned? Because I'm telling you right now, I want to go with the motion as far as our county manager.
You know,
Huh?
You need a second.
Second, what?
You need a second before we do discussion, okay?
Yes, sir, I do need a second.
You need a second what Mr. Austin.
No.
Commissioner Fain.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm confused too.
Don't agree to what?
Don't agree to it right now with what Tommy's talking about.
So now you, Madam Chair, you back at me? Is that
What
what we
we
are?
do now is we would vote on Tommy's amended motion, I believe.
No. Commissioner Austin has asked to remove his motion.
Ms. Fain.
Fains, do you agree to that since you were the second?
To start something else.
Yeah. You agree?
before we do any remove of
I'm not gonna move
anything,
anything till we figure out where we are.
can we just talk?
Go ahead.
Can we just
No, I'm not
talk?
removing it.
And I would like to just go, number one, we said accept the motion of the county manager's budget, you know, as it is. But then Mr. Ellie said that we can vote to freeze certain things after we accept the motion. So is that a possibility? That is a potential motion that will come up. The next, in terms of freezing the potential fire, then address that. But I would like everybody to say why they feel, why they want to do it. And then everybody would know what everybody else is thinking. And then when we could just come to a understanding of where everybody's coming from. And then when it gets to the committee, we know what to ask them to look for.
This is why I want to study. I'm the newest member here. I don't know nothing about the fire department or the volunteers. I don't know how you work. I don't know how you go. I done talked to 1,000 people and got 1,000 opinions. The reason I want to study is because I don't want to see no volunteers lose pay, period. I don't want to see fire taxes go up because of the decision that we made. I'm all for redistricting. But if the study comes back and say, this is not what's best for this county, that's what it is. So you freeze what we put in the budget, because if it comes back differently, it's already there. You will get the 10,000 that you was promised. The volunteers would get the raise that they said they was gonna get. So let the study tell us if we on the right path or not. This is what's best for me, not only for my constituents, but for the county. I need to make sure that I'm making the right decision. And this dog and pony show that we doing here ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. We need to agree to disagree, and we can't even do that. Everybody trying to play baseball, but ain't got a darn baseball field to play it on. I'm trying to get us a baseball field to play on, and that's called understanding. And I need an understanding. This is why I did my emotions. This is why I did my amendments, so I can get an understanding and I can explain it to my constituents and I can explain it to the county on why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. I want y'all to have the money. I want y'all to have the raise. But at the same time, I need to make sure that I'm doing the right thing, because this is my first major vote as your county commissioner since I've been here for 5.5 months.
But Sean, based on what you're saying, the study, you approve, you recommend a study. The study, I would think, would get after everything.
Exactly. It would
get
give me
after
everything we need
that you
to know.
want.
And we
Based-
won't be going this back and forth with the
Because
community.
this is going to be
with nobody.
ridiculous. It's going to be, so a study would get us to where we need to, study would get us to where we need to get. The things that you're concerned would come out in the study. And when you talk with consultants about doing studies, those things will be addressed because they should address our concerns.
Just like with the sheriff in the jail. Nobody felt like we needed a new jail. Half the people was against the new jail. But when we did that study and it came back, we had the worst jail in the state. We know that we need a new jail. Ain't no need to patch it. We put millions of dollars into the jail for what? When we know we need a new jail now. And guess what? You ain't heard a word from the community. Why we can't get the same thing for the fire department? If they say this is what's best, we roll with it. If they say it ain't roll with it, y'all know what we know. We roll with it. We have to roll with the punches, whether they're good or bad. I'm
The
done.
situation is, Mr. Commissioner, we don't want to handcuff the existing operation
Not handcuffed.
before the consultant and the study comes forth. And so if we adopt the budget as it is presented, we'll be doing that.
If they was already operating with what they got, a few months ain't gonna make a hill of beans, Archie. So what you talking about makes no sense.
I'm glad what you're talking about makes.
If they was already operating what they have, is no difference in a couple months to let this study go through to tell us what we doing and what we ain't doing.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair,
Your piece.
can we separate the two issues?
That's what I said from the
Why don't-
beginning. We need to
Why don't we do this? Why don't we make a motion to adopt the budget as given by the county manager? Period. And then somebody wants to come up after that and come back with another motion about freezing this and freezing that, which is what Dan had said, Dan. Somebody can do that. Let's get this over with.
So,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we made that motion once and it was voted down.
I don't think
So we
everybody.
want to vote
It's
it down?
already in here.
Because
Motion accepted by the old county manager.
I made the motion earlier that we adopt the manager's recommended fiscal year 23-24 budget. We got a second. Then we did a roll call. That motion failed.
Cause y'all did never. give
Okay,
us hands.
so now you want to make that motion again?
and the budget the people did not agree with. That's the only reason why it failed.
I think if you do that again, I think you might change
all right,
something.
who has a motion on the floor right now?
I have.
Nobody? There are no motions on the
Archie, go
floor.
ahead and do it again.
Motion on, Dan.
Archie, will you make the motion you made at the beginning of the meeting?
Yeah, great.
I move that we adopt the manager's recommended fiscal year 23-24 budget as presented.
I'll second it.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Taylor. It's been seconded by Commissioner Brummett. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Madam-
those,
Go ahead.
all those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries.
By unanimous vote, not unanimous vote, by majority vote, the motion will carry at this time.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we freeze the budget in accordance with the items prescribed that the county fire department budget, there's a hiring freeze, and that their budget is frozen except for personnel and operating expenses, and that any equipment or other spending will come before the board for approval until the study is complete as it relates to the county fire department.
Commissioner Brummett,
And that was,
Can
can
we,
you add debt to that, please?
debt
Debt.
service?
Capital and debt and
as long as
the
the debt,
operating,
as long as the debt is due at that time, we're not going to prepay debt,
I agree.
And when you say personnel, you're talking about the full-time positions?
full-time and
versus-
part-time. We'd still have, those guys still have to work because we don't have any volunteers. So everybody that's on staff has still got to work.
So you would allow the part-timers to still be?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to clarify. It's just the full-time positions that are vacant, you're freezing.
All positions are frozen as far as hiring new people. But part-timers still continue to work during this period. We've got to run the service. And then as it relates to the part-time positions that were prescribed in the budget through the fire tax, those positions will not be funded until after the fire study. There'll be no increase in the capital contribution we make to the combination departments. And there'll be no increase in that capital until after the fire study is completed. That's my motion.
Vice Chairman Brummett, the increase to $15 an hour, does that,
That stays, there's no increase in salary
so it would not, until the salary is
until
conducted?
the
that
salary
would not-
study, until that is completed. Does that, you had it in the original budget, it was $15. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes,
We would
sir,
stay
that
with the
deviates
15.
from the recommended.
We would stay with the 15 that's recommended.
No, sir, we pay 14 now. We're recommending to go to
The
15.
recommended budget that we just approved has $15.
Yes,
Correct.
So
sir.
we would be consistent with that.
So
We wouldn't go to the 16.
You
that
don't want
we
to go to your,
recommended.
okay.
16 is in
It was in the,
proposal, yeah,
Right.
public safety. So we will increase it from 14 to $15 an hour as adopted in the budget.
as adopted in the budget. Are there any more questions for clarity?
No, just want to make sure we got it right.
I listen back and forth and I don't have, I'm listening. And can you clarify what things we are freezing or what? I don't want, all I'm saying is I don't want to do anything to hurt the fire chief going out here and protecting our citizens. So I want to make sure everything's in place that we do that. And so just get him to repeat
Yeah, I
that.
think everybody wants that, Mr. Hester.
Thank you.
Well, it's just that way we know you got it.
Vice Chairman Brummett, correct me if I have this wrong, but these freezes pertain to the Vance County Fire Department. You're freezing their fire budget for hiring of the full-time personnel, part-time personnel. We would continue to pay and use who are on the roster. It would freeze any capital expenditures. It would allow any scheduled debt service that may be coming forward, no pre-made payments on debt service. And there was something about no increase to the capital.
That's on the fire tax side. We had discussed in the other thing going to 110. We're not doing that.
Okay. So with those
At this
items, I think we could agree to that as staff.
Okay.
Is that workable, Mr.?
I believe so. Yes.
So the motion has been made by Commissioner Brummett.
So
That-
the question I have is, how does that tie the hands of the Vance County Fire Department? It doesn't.
They operate.
Compared to the proposal and.
Well, see, that makes you're making an assumption, and that is that the Vance County Fire Department is operating right now at full efficiency. That's the assumption you're making. When you freeze those positions, you're saying that the Vance County Fire Department is operating right now at full efficiency. And I would submit to you that they're not. Vacancies create problems. Creates problems when people are absent, when they're sick or whatever. If you're saying that you're going to tie the hands of the police, of the fire chief, so that he can't hire anybody full-time, then what you're saying is that if something goes down over there and he needs to hire somebody full-time, he can't do it. And I'm
Mr.
against that.
That's not what they're saying.
Madam Chair, can I?
Okay, what are they saying?
Madam Chair, if I can elaborate. So the county fire department has to have 19 people on its roster, 15 for the main fire station, 4 for the sub, total of 19. They have 12 firefighters and they supplement the paid part-time numbers to get them up to the total of 19 to keep that for their ISO rating that benefits not only the Golden Belt, but also the real nonprofits as well as the city of Henderson in terms of its ISO rating. So I think that's still workable. And like I said earlier, they've had vacancies of 3 to 4 people in the past 12 months anyway.
And it's reasonable, to assume they're not going to hire anybody just like that if they've had those vacancies that long.
Yeah.
But on the other hand.
We're talking 60 to 90 days for this study and then we'll move forward.
And see, that's,
Or the other.
and that's what budget amendments is for. We budget amendment all the time. Every time I've been on here, we've been budgeted amendment. We budgeted amendment a whole bunch of times last year for the jail.
Okay.
We can budget amendment for the fire department if need be. So nobody's tying nobody's hands. If they need to come before the board, if they need to address the county manager, they're free to do so and say that, you know, this situation has arisen. We need to hire these people because it's a certain circumstances. So nobody's hands is tied. Can that budget not be amended, Ms. Bigelow? Thank you.
Madam Chairman, if he came before me and then I come before you, and if he had a certain number of vacancies and he was having a hard time getting paid part-time personnel to come on the roster, we could come back to you and say, board, can we unfreeze 1, 2, 3 of those full times? And you'd make that decision at that point in time. You could say yes or no.
That's all we was.
And that's just what he just said.
All right, we had a motion and a second.
Okay, the motion has been made that, I don't know what the motion.
As stated by the county manager.
Could you clarify, Mr. Manager, so that every,
One more time.
or you want to do it, Mr. Brown? One of you all need to do it because it was very long-winded. You know, I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have sort of chopped it up a little bit more so that we can do it
So Vice
item
Chairman,
by line item, but that's not the way the motion was made. So if we can get clarity,
I'll
then
try to
that would be very helpful.
reword it for Vice Chairman Brummett. So again, he made a motion to regarding the adopted fiscal year 23-24 budget for July 1, that within the Vance County Fire Department, you'd be having a hiring freeze on the full-time positions. You would have a spending freeze on capital items. You would have the part-time positions paid by the fire department would continue. And the $15 an hour would not increase until the study's conducted to determine if that was the will of the board or not.
But the county manager just said it's been made by Mr. Brummett. It's seconded by Mrs. Faines, all those, Commissioner Faines, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Question,
Discussion. Yeah.
before we vote.
We've had discussion.
So if we want some addition, is there anyone want to make
Your
some?
motion, Mr. Elliott, you said in terms of we approved the budget as recommended by you previously, right?
Correct. You've already put to bed the budget for July 1, and these are basically changes, amendments to that.
So the
Directives
budget
to
recommended
staff,
done. We
basically.
got that done. That's on the table. That's done. Now we're doing what Mr. Austin wanted in terms, okay, from it.
And you're really not amending that budget. You're just giving directives to staff in terms of decisions, spending and hiring decisions through this motion.
Okay, okay.
I have one question if I could,
Mhm.
Sam. Scott, do you see these as Mr. Brummett has put forward? Do you see that hurting the fire department as far as the personnel or as far as the individuals in this county, giving them good, full protection in our community?
I believe in the short term of getting this study done. If this was a long-term decision, yeah, it could have some negative.
Short term,
The short term, I believe it's a reasonable compromise.
okay.
So we're in discussion, right?
Yeah.
Could we hear from the Vance County Fire Chief, what he thinks about that?
The time for that is up.
Okay. I thought everybody had a
He
voice.
said plenty on, did you not see it on TV last night? He said plenty on there.
I didn't see anything.
Okay, I'll send the link to you.
I did not see anything on
What was
TV
said.
about what's
I don't
going
think
on in
no-
Vance County.
Yeah, added, none of us ain't heard. So no, I'm not being, I'm not trying to be uncooperative or whatever, but statements been made twice at the, Public Safety Committee, statements been made on WRL, statements been made on the, radio station, so statements been out there, so we didn't hear what needs to be said. Now, if you need, after we vote or whatever, if you need to have some private conversation, I would encourage you, because that's part of the investigation too. So, but at this time, I think we're ready to vote and go forward. So the motion has been made. It's been properly seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think at this time, because I don't know who's coming from, let's go individually, like we did before. Mr. Taylor? Mr. Austin?
Yes.
Mr. Brummett?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly? Ms. Faines? Mr. Hester?
I'm gonna vote no.
Okay, I'm gonna vote not, there's 5 for and 2 against. So move and carry.
Okay, Madam Chair, the only question left from the list that was presented today was on whether to proceed with the separating of the chief and the fire marshal. I believe that was the intent of some of the conversations with the committees.
My motion that we separate the fire chief from the fire marshal.
Any
Well,
discussion?
I haven't,
That's
is
it,
this another
discussion.
motion?
Yes.
And what are we gonna do now?
Separate the fire chief from the fire marshal.
I don't think that has to be done till the study's done.
I thought we were waiting for a consultant here. and
Yes.
Doing some investigation. Now we're making another decision before we get a consultant and an investigation. How many decisions are we gonna make before we get a consultant and a decision?
You can't keep doing this and it's,
We didn't always have the fire marshal. There was when I last fire marshal left, we just.
why
put
don't we
it-
leave it as it is until we get a study done? You keep doing things that you're not, you keep wanting to change this and change that and change this, and you have no study, just throw it out here. And look, I'm not against what Sean said about a study. Let's leave things alone and get the study done and move forward with this county.
And it's only gonna take 30 to 90 days, so what's the big rush?
Motion on the floor, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
The motion has been made and properly second.
What's the motion?
Separate.
The motion was made by Commissioner Fines that a separation occur as to the fire chief and the fire marshal. It was seconded by Commissioner Austin, I believe.
Yes.
And so now it's on the floor for discussion. If anyone, if discussion has been stated by Mr. Hester, Mr. Kelly, you have any additional statements you wish to make?
My thing is that suppose you're gonna separate them, you make a decision, like Mr. Harrison said, you're making a decision. The study comes back and says that it recommends something else. Why do this? I still say, let's work through the study.
Mr. Taylor, you got any things you usually have an opinion? You have any?
Now, I've already expressed my opinion on this. The consultant and investigation comes before decision-making. We're
Okay,
doing decision-making before we're looking at consultants and this.
so you seconded it, Mr. Austin. You wish to add anything? Ms. Fines, do you wish to add anything, Mr. Bryant?
That's it.
Madam Chair, can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
From a supervisor standpoint, if you do separate the chief from the fire marshal as a department head, I will have nobody over those full-time employees in terms of an operational standpoint over that department who answer to me as manager. I'd recommend keeping it together until you conduct the study.
How does separate it? We didn't say get rid of anybody. We just said separate the two positions.
Well, there's not two positions. There's one position. that
That's right. So
person
we're
serve
gonna-
two roles.
There'll
but
be two different roles.
You'd have to create another position for fire marshal if you're going to separate it from.
And
fire
that's what
chief.
the motion is for.
Why leave it as it is? Your county manager just told you to leave it. It's one job.
Hold on.
I'm still here.
Hold on.
But see, that's-
So-
that's-
Hold on. I
Discussion
have
is
a
good
question.
for the board. And let everybody get their opinion. Go ahead.
Fine.
I have a question. We put a high freeze. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, I have a question. If we put a higher freeze, and we doing a study, then we can't actually hire nobody until the study comes back. Is that right or wrong? I'm just trying to get clarity because, I'm getting confused with the conversations.
Well, if you look at hiring a new fire chief, there's not a position for that fire chief, but yeah, your line of thinking is correct. If there's a hiring freeze, then unless you say there's not for that position, it'd be frozen.
So do we need to put that in the study and keep it moving?
Let the study take care of it.
I'm just trying to make sure we got clarity because, going back and forth, we get clouded too.
I mean, the study could give you the best practice as to whether,
That's why I asked the question.
She was throwing motion.
Should we throw a motion? Will you withdraw your second?
So we don't have,
We withdraw the motion and the second.
okay.
Okay, the motion has been withdrawn about separation of the fire chief and fire marshal at this time. The seconded has been withdrawn as well, so it's no longer on the floor for vote.
Perhaps I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Oh, there's another issue that's on our agenda.
We've got one more matter on the agenda.
We're not gonna
Um,
start a fire. are we?
Number 3 on the agenda. It has nothing to do with the fire station at all. There is amendment, for a holiday schedule to include Juneteenth. That came at the,
Okay.
suggestion of a county employee. I will say this, that the city of Henderson has adopted Juneteenth as a holiday. That was incorporated in their budget last year. Last December, they took a vote on that and they did approve. The motion, is there a motion on the floor for that as it relates to
Madam
that?
Chair, just a point of discussion on that. I know the state treats that as a floating holiday. Is that something we want to send? Because this is for the 2024 year. Can we send that to the HR committee to look and see what others are doing around?
Before doing that, it was brought to the attention of our county manager, so I would like for him to as to whether or not he think it's feasible for us to be able to do that.
Well, first of all, in your packet, you've got a proposed resolution we prepared regarding the request to put this on the agenda. We would recommend that if you're going to add it, that you'd add it as additional holiday to the county's holiday schedule. Vance County follows the state of North Carolina's holiday schedule. There's currently 10 holidays on the schedule. This would be an 11th that would be in addition to that schedule. You normally adopt this schedule in December, like you did it in December of 2022 for all of calendar year 2023. Since it is only 5 days prior to June the 19th, and I'm not sure what departments have scheduled for work on the 19th. I mean, I would recommend consider adding it to the calendar for 2024, but if the board has other intentions, if you were to do it, again, just keep in mind, if you do it for 2023, you're doing it with 5 days advance notice of closing the county offices for this coming Monday, June the 19th. In terms of a floating holiday, I think the finance officer is kicking me under the table saying that she does not recommend a floating holiday from a bookkeeping. Go ahead.
That's a payroll nightmare.
Okay, that's just, that's what the state does, and that's why I didn't know if that was something that needed to have some discussion.
Yeah, it's because of our approved public safety payroll of the additional hours and things that we approved a couple years ago. If it's a floating holiday, it has to be a set day for those that are on duty to get a certain number of hours, those that are off duty to get hour for hour, things like that. So it needs to be a recognized day according.
I make a motion that we recognize June 10th, June 19th as a holiday starting in year 24.
A motion has been made that we recognize Juneteenth as a local holiday for
In year.
starting in the year of 2024. It was made by Commissioner Kelly. It was seconded by Commissioner Austin. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? By unanimous vote, it is so approved. Now, Mr.
Yes, ma'am. Can I make the
Yeah.
motion to adjourn now?
Yes, you may. Wait a minute, unless someone else has any,
Ah,
because we do have number 4, said other items that's necessary.
May I make a motion to adjourn?
Okay, so motion has been made, properly second, that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Ah.
See y'all the 10th.